Today, I want to focus on the Old Testament reading. If Isaiah were a TV series, chapter 34 from last week would be the episode you start and immediately regret. You know the one. You're 5 minutes in and you're thinking, oh no, this was a mistake. I do not have the emotional bandwidth for this. Because chapter 34 doesn't ease you in. The soil turns to sulfur. The land burns night and day, unquenched. Smoke hangs where life used to be. Faith feels worn thin. There's no heroic ending. There's no last-minute rescue. What's left behind are scavengers, jackals, owls, ravens, creatures that live after everything collapses. The screen would fade to black. No commercial break, no relief, just devastation. It's as if Isaiah's writers didn't know when to stop. And here's the harder part. This isn't exaggeration for dramatic effect. I wish it was. This is the reality of war. This is history. Judah is staring down the empire of Babylon. The city will fall. The temple will be destroyed. Families will be displaced. They will lose their homes. They will become refugees. They will carry all that loss in their bodies, in how they walk, in how softly they learn to speak, in the questions their children eventually stop asking. And this is the part we don't love to sit with. Most nations do not come back from this level of destruction. History does not owe anyone a redemption arc. Isaiah 34 knows this, so it tells the truth without softening. asks people to feel hopeful, thank God. He asks them to practice hope. He gives them verbs. Strengthen your weak hands. Steady your shaking knees. Speak courage into frightened bodies. These are not emotions, they are actions. Hope here is not a mood, it's a posture, it's something you do. Hope that limps, hope that shows up tired, hope that does not promise resolution, but presence. Can you see it? Life pushing up where everything says it should not. Maybe in your life it looks like sobriety for the fourth time, or reconciliation that feels awkward and fragile. Maybe it looks like a church that shows up for people who are inconvenient, complicated, and exhausting, which, to be fair, is all of us on a rotating basis. Because this hope doesn't just happen to us, it happens through us. It happens through us. Isaiah 35 is not asking whether everything will change, it's asking what will we do if nothing changes? This is not a victory speech. This is instructions for survival with dignity. Practicing hope in the face of despair is defiance. It's subversive. And Isaiah dares to suggest that roads are made through deserts, not triumphantly, not all at once, but faithfully. I need a sip of water, y'all. Way through the desert. And if all that still feels abstract, if hope is practice, sounds lovely but vague and kind of slippery, thank God history gives us real-life examples. I read this story about anti-slavery activist Sojourner Truth. So after one of her speeches, she was heckled. A man sneered at her and said, "Old woman, do you really think that your talk makes any difference? I don't care any more for what you have to say than for a bite of a flea." She considered this and then said, "Perhaps not, but Lord willing, I'll keep you scratching." I love that. Not because it's clever, but because it's honest. That's how change usually happens, not all at once, not through one sweeping victory, but through persistent, strategic, almost irritating faithfulness. Enough fleas biting frequently in the right places can bring down even the scariest, biggest dog. Isaiah 35 is an ode to a flea. It doesn't overthrow the empire in a single verse. It simply refuses to let despair have the last word. And that's why the church gives us this text on Gaudete Sunday. Gaudete means rejoice in Latin, not because everything is resolved, but because hope is still alive. It's the pause in Advent that whispers, you don't have to wait for a happy ending to practice joy, to practice hope. So I read an article recently that would not let me go. It was about a seaside town in Japan called Shirahama. Most people come there for the obvious things, the beaches, the beautiful views, the hot springs, for rest and rejuvenation. But some people come because they are done. Done trying, done pretending. Could I have the next slide, please? So just outside the town is a cliff called Sandenbäcki. It's nearly 200 feet high. The ocean below is strong, and whatever goes over that cliff does not return. Now, for years, people have come to this very site carrying the heaviest intentions a body can hold. And right there, where you would expect only warning signs and wind, there is a phone booth. If you could see it in the picture. It stands quietly among the trees, and inside it is a small cross with flowers and a paperback Bible and a bright green phone. Sometimes someone lifts the receiver, and inside a nearby church, that phone rings, often in the middle of the night. And when it does, Pastor Yoichi Fujiabo answers it. "Moshi, Moshi, I'm here," he says. And on the other end is usually a voice that can barely speak. "Please help." Yoichi grabs his keys, gets in his car, and drives into the dark. These are stills from a documentary, so that's him. For more than 30 years, he has done this. He has answered more than 1,000 phone calls. Headlights sweeping the ground. Sometimes he sees someone out there, and other times he has to call out into the wind to find them. When he does find them, he does not preach. He does not pontificate. He listens. Next slide, please. So near the phone booth, there is a sign that the church put up. It doesn't threaten, it doesn't guilt trip or shame. It simply says, "You are precious and honored in my sight, and I love you. Please consult us before making any important decisions." That's all. A cross at the top, an expression of love in the middle, and a phone number at the bottom. It's not flashy. It's just a pause offered to a precious life on the brink. What stays with me about the story is not just the drama of the rescues, because that could undo me. But what stays with me is how normal and down to earth Yoichi is. Next slide, please. This is him and his wife, Ayumi. He smiles easily. He loves a Hawaiian shirt. And these days, he lives alongside cancer, a chronic, painful companion. But he tells the story about how he went to church for the first time because a girl invited him. An impure motive, he says, laughing. But he saw something real, a church that didn't just talk about love, but enacted it. A pastor who brought people home, a community who made room instead of rules. If this is what God is like, he thought, I want in. This is a picture of their church. It's all of 10 people. It's small, it's humble, it's imperfect. People argue sometimes, things break, and some stories never resolve. And still, that phone stays plugged in. Some members struggle when new people start coming, because it's people with addictions, mental illness, complicated histories. And Yoichi keeps saying the same thing. I want a church that is a zoo. Not a museum, not a place where everything is preserved and respectable. I want a place that's alive and noisy. with people who are equal parts bewildering and beautiful. Now, not every rescue ends the way he hopes. He knows this. He knows you can do everything right and still lose someone. Which is why the story feels like Isaiah 35 to me. Hope here looks like a ringing phone, keys in your hand, headlights cutting through the dark, a body willing to move toward the edge instead of turning away from it. And Isaiah does not ask us to imagine a better ending. He asks us to decide what we will do next. Will we stay reachable, or will we go quiet? Will we answer, or will we let the phone ring? Will we step into the cold night air, or stay inside? Let me ask you this. Where in your life is hope asking for your participation? Is there something in your life that you need to hold out hope for? Is there somebody in your world who needs you to hold out hope for them? Because the deeper question is, in a world that profits from our despair, where have we been trained, almost without noticing, not to answer? Whose cries have become background noise? Which lives have been labeled too inconvenient to interrupt our peace? Hope is not a mood. It is a discipline. And Advent is not just a season of waiting, it's a season of choosing between silence and response, between resignation and stubborn hope. The road through the desert will not appear by a miracle. It is made. It is pressed into the earth by feet that keep moving, our feet. By those who refuse to look away, by those who answer, by those who will not let despair have the last word. This is the good news of Advent. Because the wilderness is not silent, voices in the desert still rise, but God is listening. And God, patient and near, keeps making roads through dust and darkness, through tired hands, through interrupted lives, through ordinary people who keep showing up. God keeps making roads through the wilderness, through each and every one of us. Amen.